My goal is to maximize your chances of filing your own case as well as possible, making your case as strong as possible to give you the best chances possible of winning. Welcome. I am Otis Landerholm. I'm the founding attorney here at Landerholm Immigration, A.P.C, where we fight for your American dream. And thank you so much. I really encourage you to go through every single one of these videos. Make sure that you're clear about what asylum law is, what asylum law isn't, what the risks involved are, what to expect, so that you get all your questions answered before submitting your case. We can't guarantee success in any case. Two, asylum law is a risky process to go through, because if you file and if you lose, you will be given a notice to appear and you'll be put into deportation proceedings in immigration court. You don't want to mess it up. There are thousands of people that are applying for asylum every single year. And if you're going to be one of them, I'd love to assist you with it. I've been practicing asylum law for over 10 years. I love helping people win. Today we're talking about asylum. What is asylum? Basically, the word asylum means protection. If you or if a person is afraid for their life to return to their country of origin, then the law in certain situations should allow that person to not be returned, not be forced to return to a country where their life or their freedom is threatened. And so that really is what asylum law is about. To win an asylum case in the United States, you've got to show the following things. You've got to show you've got a well-founded fear of quote unquote persecution on account of one of 5 things that I'm going to go over right now, and you can't have any bars. Those are the big requirements. There's kind of a 6th requirement too. You've got to show a well-founded fear of persecution on account of one of 5 things, which is like the hardest thing to show typically. You can't have any bars, and it's a discretionary benefit. Those are the 6 requirements. Got it? Well-founded fear of persecution on account of one of 5 things: your race, or your religion, or your nationality, or your political opinion, or your quote-unquote membership in a particular social group. Race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a quote-unquote particular social group. And you can't trigger any bar to asylum, and you've got to show that you warrant a favorable exercise of discretion. And so let's go through it. Let's go through each of those. Well-founded fear. What the heck does that mean? That's the first legal requirement. What a well-founded fear means: 1, you are afraid to go back to your country. If you aren't, don't file asylum. You'll lose. That fear has to be quote-unquote well-founded, objective, verifiable news, country conditions. It's got to be rational. It's got to be reasonable. We've got to be able to point to say, okay, this is why you are afraid. All right. It's not just a fear. It's got to be a quote unquote well-founded fear. There are cases in U.S. asylum law is at least a 1 in 10 chance that you're going to suffer persecution. You do not have to show that it's like certain. It's certain that if you go back, you don't have to show that 100% chance you go back to your country, you're going to get killed. If you have that, you qualify. If you have that, file your case. But if you don't have that, it doesn't have to be that level of certainty to qualify as a quote-unquote well-founded fear. In fact, it doesn't even have to be 50% likelihood. You know, imagine a law in your country that says we're killing half of the men. That's the law. If there's men in the country, it's going to be random. 50% of them, boom, they're going to be killed. If that were to happen, you don't know if you're going to be persecuted. There's a 50% chance you could lose your life if you go back to your country. That's an asylum case. The law recognizes that in situations where it's like 50%, that's a well-founded fear. If it's 40, 30, 20% chance, it's still a well-founded fear. In fact, they say that if it's a 1 in 10 likelihood, what a good immigration lawyer will do, and what I want you to think about as you start to build your case, is what evidence in the laws of your country can we look to? What evidence of like what's happening on the ground as far as like maybe news articles, friends that are in a similar situation, or family members who are in a similar situation, or other people who can testify or write a letter or explain what's really going on. Maybe there's like a country conditions expert that we could look for that has already written something. Maybe there's books written that have been written about the type of situation that you're facing. And we've got to include it in your application so that you can show you have a quote unquote well-founded fear of persecution. If you have suffered what they call past persecution, if you yourself have suffered violence, threats, persecution in the past, then that tips the scale in favor of finding a well-founded fear. So that's the first requirement, well-founded fear. The second requirement is it's got to be of persecution. What is persecution? Persecution often means physical violence. It can be sexual violence. You've been raped, or you're afraid that you will be. Economic harm. Hey, you're blacklisted. You're never going to be able to work again. These severe forms of discrimination. You've got to look at the exact harm that you are claiming, and we've got to strategize. Hey, how can we show or explain that what you're afraid of really is persecution? Typically, if you are really thinking of filing for asylum, typically we're talking violence. Death threats against your family. It doesn't even have to be to you. It could be against your family members. That can rise to the level of persecution. One, it's a well-founded fear. Two, it's of persecution. The third requirement is that it's got to be on account of. One of these 5 grounds that I'm about to list has to be at least one of the central motives, one of the central reasons that the bad guy is going to harm you. It matters what the persecutor thinks. The persecutor, in the persecutor's mind, has to be after you because on account of one of those 5 things. And it's hard to show that sometimes. If they're just after you because they don't like you, that doesn't meet the asylum definition. So now it's time to go through these 5. Got to be on account of your race, your religion, your nationality, your political opinion, or your quote unquote membership in a particular social group. The second one's religion. And if you can show that the reason that the bad guys are going to do you harm is on account of your religious belief, then great. Race, religion, nationality. Nationality is similar. National origin, nationality is similar to the race question. The question is kind of like, what ethnicity do you have? What genealogy do you have? Okay. Political opinion is the fourth. Political opinion, often we talk about asylum, we talk about it as quote unquote political asylum. Have a specific political opinion. And if that opinion is why you're going to be harmed, then okay, all right, that could qualify. If you have a specific political opinion, then you might qualify also. And then the last one is the hardest to define. It's a quote unquote particular social group. And so what the heck does that mean? Well, it's got to be like a group within your country's society. Your culture recognizes it or views that the group that you belong to is a group. It's not a group that you can just change. A clear group of people, we call it an immutable characteristic. It's like it's so fundamental to who they are, they can't change that. If you are like often the PSG claims, the particular social group claims, often they're along the lines of sexual orientation, race, religion, nationality, political opinion. Don't include anything related to gender. Don't include anything related to sexual violence. You've got to show you've got a well-founded fear of persecution on account of one of those 5 things: your race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or your membership in a particular social group. And you can't have one of the bars to asylum. So what are the bars to asylum? Big asylum bar. The big one is what we call the 1-year bar. If you have a case like this, you've got to file your case within 1 year of your most recent entry into the United States. There are 2 exceptions to the 1-year bar. I'm not going to discuss them in this particular video. There are also other bars. And so there are bars. You're going to want to watch and understand each of the bars just to make sure that you don't have anything that's going to prohibit you from filing for asylum. And the last requirement is you've got to show that you warrant a favorable exercise of discretion. As long as you don't have any arrests, you've never done anything bad, you can win an asylum case under a matter of discretion. And so just to review everything that we've gone over, you've got to show that you have a well-founded fear of persecution on account of one of 5 things: your race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or political social group. You've got to show you haven't triggered any of the bars, which we'll go over, and you've got to show that you merit a favorable exercise of discretion. Those are the big requirements, all right? If you meet each of those requirements, congratulations, you have an asylum case. But just thinking that you meet those requirements isn't enough. You got to meet those requirements, and you got to be able to prove that you meet those requirements to an immigration officer. So let's talk about proving it, and let's talk about how to file that case, and let's talk about how do we make that case? How do we build the case? All right, here's what I want you to know. You do not have to have evidence that is like from what exactly happened. Asylum law understands that sometimes somebody who's fleeing for their lives has to pick up and go and might not be carrying all of their evidence with them at the moment that they've got to pick up and leave. And asylum law can say, okay, that's enough. All right, the clear, consistent testimony of the applicant, him or herself, can be sufficient. I've won asylum cases with just that, with nothing but that. Your clear, consistent testimony. If you do have photos of the injuries you suffered, if you do have medical records of when you were injured, or even if it's not physical harm, but psychological harm, if you've met with a therapist to try to fix this issue, trauma, let's document all of that. That'll go into the building of your case, all right? And so now you understand the law. You understand the law. Hopefully you understand whether or not you qualify. Nothing of what I've said is legal advice at all. I am not recommending that you file asylum. I don't know you. I don't know anything about your particular situation. But if you yourself are clear and understand that, okay, these are the laws, this is the way it works, this is the task before us, this is how we're going to need to build the case, then okay, it's like, what's next? It's now to start building the case. And that means filling out the form properly. That means writing a detailed declaration that explains all of the reasons that you're afraid to go back to your country. That means putting together the country conditions evidence. And I'm going to show you how to do that in separate videos here. We're going to show you how to do that. And we've got to talk about how to kind of organize the packet and put it together and mail it to the government and make sure that you've maintained a record of everything you've mailed the government. And we've got to talk about kind of those logistics. One other thing that we need to discuss in the law is, okay, when we're applying for asylum, we're also simultaneously applying for quote unquote withholding of removal and also for relief under the Convention Against Torture. And so you'll expect videos about that. The last thing that I want to say before finishing this video is, what are the risks? Because if you file asylum, you've got to show all of that stuff to convince an asylum officer. If the asylum officer disagrees, you've got to show to a judge that you meet all of those criteria. And so what are the risks if the asylum office disagrees? What are the risks if the immigration judge disagrees? The way it works is, if the asylum officer disagrees or thinks that you've triggered a bar or believes that you don't have a well-founded fear, or believes you don't have a well-founded fear of quote unquote persecution, or that it's not on account of one of those 5 things: race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group. If the asylum officer doesn't believe that you've got a case, USCIS, the Citizenship and Immigration Service, issue you a notice to appear. And they'll say, okay, go to immigration court. Go to immigration court. I'm sorry, asylum officer, I don't feel that I can approve your case. I'm not denying your case. I just don't feel like I can approve it. So I'm going to send you to a judge. And you're going to have to say the same process, but in immigration court. And here's, if you are already in immigration there, you're going to want a lawyer. So once in immigration court, if you're in front of a judge, yes, you're going to want a lawyer representing you through that whole case. Your chances of success go up 80% if you have a lawyer. So that's the risk. You could get yourself a deportation order against you. If somebody's in their final hearing and they're ordered deported, they have the right to appeal. All right, nobody's deported right then and there. You have 30 days to file an appeal and to argue that the immigration judge got it wrong. That's why you want to prepare your case. You want to prepare and prepare and prepare and document and document and document and be rigorous. There is risk when you apply for asylum. It's like the risk of getting yourself deported. But there are serious benefits of filing for asylum too. You get status in the US. You get protection against deportation if you win. You get a work permit. You get the ability to apply for a green card in the future and eventually US citizenship if you win asylum. Thank you so much for watching this first video. I'm Otis Landerholm, Landerholm Immigration A.P.C, where we fight for your American dream. All right, bye-bye.